Hello, everyone. I'm Stephanie Boozer with CUGC HQ. So happy to welcome you to today's webinar with ControlUp. I'm glad to have them back on our stage today. Before we dive in, I just want to let you know about a couple of events that we have coming up. We have our EMEA XL, which is our larger CUGC meeting. It's all of our EMEA groups come together, and it's about most of a day. Lots of great content out there, and that's on October 14th. And then opening soon, you won't find it on the CUGC calendar just yet, but it's supposed to go live today. So be on the lookout, is the last CUGC XL of the year. So it's for the West. So all of the groups on the West side of the United States also coming together. Going to be another great day of content, and excited to get that announced today so you get a sneak peek. You can access all of this through our events calendar, and I've put a link in the chat for you so that you can get to that pretty quickly. Also, we do have our Women in Technology Mentoring Program application open right now. It's a great program. We pair women in technology with one-on-one mentorship. So there's CTPs, there's CTAs, and there's also men involved in our group. Oh, sorry, my slides changed. But definitely, if you know of a woman that would like to participate, send her this link, or you can snap that QR code and fill out an application. All right, so we are going to talk about automating your Citrix problems away with ControlUp. And just to let you know, we are recording this presentation, and you'll get a link to the recording tomorrow. It's going to come to you from GoToWebinar, so be on the lookout for that. Submit your questions as you have them. We're going to get to as many as we can today, so just type them in as you have them, and we'll ask them when we can. Also, later I'll send you a survey to fill out. We just want to get your feedback. It's anonymous and very, very short, I promise. All right, so with us today we have Rory Monaghan. He is a CTA. He's also at ControlUp as a marketing manager. And Trentent, who has done several of these with us. He's a senior Citrix technical expert at ControlUp. Rory is here. I think he's having trouble with his camera, so he couldn't get it to play well with GoToWebinar today, so you will hear him but not see him. So no worries, he's here. And keeping an eye on all your questions for us today is Jake Walsh. He's also a CTA, and he's moderated lots of our webinars for us, so welcome back, Jake. All right, I'm going to hand things directly over to Rory right now to get us going. So I'm going to send you the screen, and I'm going to disappear, and I will come back towards the end. So see you guys in a bit.
Perfect. Thank you. Yep, you should be seeing my screen now. Thanks so much for having us. As was stated, this is automatically solving Citrix problems with ControlUp. My name is Rory Monaghan, and I'm here today with my friend and colleague, Trentent. How are you doing, Trentent?
Doing pretty good, Rory. Doing pretty good.
Good stuff. Yeah, me too. I got a nice new shirt. I got a nice potted plant for behind me for the backdrop, and then the camera doesn't work. But what are you gonna do?
It's been that day today.
Yeah, it definitely has. Well, anyway, we won't spend too long on the slides because I know very technical audience. You mostly want to see demos, and we'll definitely have a lot of that. But before we dive into the demos, let me just do a quick run through of who we are and what we're about. So ControlUp offers a best-in-class digital employee experience monitoring and management solution. With offices in the US, Europe, and Israel, we are growing substantially year on year and received $27 million in Series C funding in late 2020, and we have our eyes set on growing bigger and better still. You can see some of our quick stats there on this slide, including the fact that we help monitor and manage over 2 million machines. We help monitor 4.8 million sessions per year, 81,000 hypervisors, and all this equates to billions of machine learning hours that helps us not only make the product better, but provide invaluable insights to our customers based on the data we collect and contextualize for you. We have several amazing partners, including Microsoft, NVIDIA, IGIL, VMware, Nutanix, and of course, this is a CUGC, Citrix too. So I said we are a best-in-class digital employee experience management solution, but what does that mean? Well, we help you to monitor and manage pretty much every important factor in providing the best experience for your employees, be they in the office or remote. And that includes helping to monitor the performance of applications, be they locally installed applications, maybe applications that you're publishing out through Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop, as well as cloud-based SaaS applications. We help you to monitor and do some really cool management actions on your infrastructure, including at the hypervisor level, doing things like power cycling, VMs, and a lot more. And also your gateways, so like your Citrix ADCs, for example. You get a lot of really rich data, and at the gateway level, that's very important for remote workforce too. We also support various different virtual workspaces, obviously including Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop and Citrix Workspace, various cloud desktops, including support for Citrix Cloud. We give you some really great specific Citrix Cloud data as well that you can report on, trigger on, and run automated actions with too, which will show some of the automation capabilities with Citrix in this session today. And also, and very importantly, with the times that we're living in, work from anywhere. And this could be physical endpoints that are sitting in an employee's home. This could be them consuming the virtual applications and desktop within Citrix. We have a new product called HDX that supports Windows, Linux, Mac OS, IGIL devices, pretty much everything you require for monitoring and managing and providing the best possible experience for your employees. And I said a mouthful, so I'll hand it over to Trentent for the next slide.
Awesome. So if you can, if I can get made presenter. So you guys can see the polls have just kind of come up. Jake, if you have those, or Stephanie, if you have those answers, if you just want to share them so we can just talk about them briefly.
Sorry, I was on mute there. So yeah, the response for users working at the moment is 76% at home, 24% from the office. Split's quite interesting actually on how many users are working remotely. So bit of a broad spread, sort of 10, smaller amount, 10 to 20%. By far the largest majority is in that sort of 31% responses, 41 to 60% working remotely. Another 30%, 61 to 80% of users working remotely, and then 15% have between 80 and 100% of the users working remotely. So a big trend towards the remote working there.
Wow. Okay, so then this.
I'll put those in the chat for you as well. Sorry.
Awesome, thank you, Jake. So obviously this webinar that we're doing is going to be very relevant to, well, everybody, mostly because it's Citrix related, but also because we can automate a lot of those challenges that you have with your remote users, and coming in, we can give you visibility there so you can actually take a look at what they're doing. So before we get there, I'm just going to show this architecture diagram of what ControlUp is and how everything kind of plugs together. So obviously this is kind of a bit busy diagram, and really what this boils down into is we've taken all this complexity and we've made one portable application that you can just double click and run anywhere in your environment and have access to monitor and manage all of your resources. So let's get into what that looks like. So I know we're all here for demos, and we want to see, you know, like how the technology works and what we can do, or what ControlUp can offer you in your environment in terms of automating your challenges and everything that you might have. So I'm going to start with our demo flow, kind of introducing you to the product, showing you how we can get that 10,000 foot view and go all the way down to the minute process level where you can actually see individual processes causing our issue. And then I'm going to do a quick demo of our monitoring and optimizing using our ControlUp automation engine. And then we'll get into more automations that are Citrix specific. So to start, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to launch Solve. So this is our ControlUp Real-Time console. So this is a C# application that's run on your premises. But we've also enabled this new feature over the last year called Solve. And this is our web console that actually allows you to monitor your environment from anywhere in the world. So you could be in Mexico, you could be on premises, it doesn't matter. You can access and actually monitor all your resources within Solve. So the main landing page for Solve is what you see here, and this is the dashboard display. So this is perfect for your knock view, or if you've got like a relatively large Citrix team and you've got like a monitor you can throw your stats on, this is what this is perfect for. So what we're looking at here is all, where we're looking at both user experience and resource graphs and dashboard displays. You can focus specifically on user experience, which highlights things like the protocol latency, logon times, and so on and so forth. Or we can focus on resources, which is more, the overall resource consumption of your environment, CPU, memory, network, disk, etc. So new in ControlUp Solve as well, that we just released like a month or two ago, is the ability to add your own dashboard. So you can actually customize your own dashboard. I've got one here that I've just been kind of playing with. And you can do that just by going add widget. And then you can see here all the different widgets you have. So if our out-of-the-box dashboards aren't completely tailored to your environment, you can certainly create your own. So that way you can see, whatever you want in your environment. You can change the scope, so you can focus it just on specific folders within your environment. So like in this particular case, I will focus on, I'll just focus on VDI and SBC. And then this is actually new for me. I didn't see this one before, where we've got different resource types now. So as it is, everything is always evolving when it's a SaaS-based application. So it looks like we've added some new stuff. So that's pretty cool. So let's look at like a percentage of available machines. So boom, we can just hit add here. And now we've got this nice, beautiful widget showing us that only 56% of our machines are available. So on that quick heads up display, we can see that there might be an issue or not, depending on what value is normal in your environment.
Right,
but let's get into the
something I love, well, not to trample all over you, but something I love about that, they went pretty quickly through. It's actually showing the real data for what you're selecting in that preview. So you don't have to try and figure out what you want to display, put it on the dashboard, and then realize, oh, that doesn't look good. You're seeing exactly what it is before you even put it on the dashboard. It's very cool.
That's right, real time in real time, yeah.
Real time.
Okay, so now that we're looking at Solve, I'm gonna pretend that I got a ticket come in and that users are complaining about some level of slowness. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna start at the host level, because some of the information the ticket kind of led me towards like a host level issue. And what I could see here is I could see all the hosts in my environment. I can see, this one particular host has got like a critical stress level. This guy's medium. These guys all look good. So a critical stress level is obviously bad. And if I want to find out what's contributing to that stress, if I just hover my mouse over top of it, Solve will actually do a little tooltip call out here. And we can see that the data store read rate is quite high. The data store write rate is quite high. And my IOPS are being consumed pretty significantly. So as I scroll to the right here and look at all the columns within Solve, we got some beautiful red columns just pop right out there, identifying what could be the problem. You can see we've actually got two little icons here. One navigates to it, and then the other actually looks at a historical report. So if I want to know, is this something that's new? Is this something that's been trending over some time? I can actually click on this and get like a quick glance as to what's happening. So here we can look at we pull this from our ControlUp Insights, so we can get an overview of what was happening over this last little bit, and we can see we can go 24 hours all the way back to 72. But if I want even more information, I can actually expand it out. And then if that were to pop out, I would be able to actually go back all the way up to 1 month without having to go up into ControlUp Insights. Okay, but let's continue our troubleshooting journey. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on these little arrows here. And this is going to take us within the host itself. And now we're looking at the virtual machines inside that host. You can see up top here, the bar is now blue. So it has highlighted the columns that it thinks are contributing to this problem. So since we clicked on a disk-related metric to drill into, it is now highlighting all of the disk-related metrics. And if we continue to scroll to the right, we can see a lot of red. So for sure, there's some kind of issue here. We can see that it is highlighting the disk-related metrics. So that's very cool. But I'm going to continue this troubleshooting journey because at this point, I identified the virtual machine. I can reboot it. I can, do some kind of maintenance task on it, but I still don't know the actual root cause. I just know one of the resources that's contributing to it. So I'm going to, again, click on the little arrows to help navigate me through my troubleshooting. And this is going to take me into the sessions view on that machine. So now I get a list of the users that are actually doing some activity on this machine. And in this one particular case, again, the column is highlighted in blue, it's disk-related metrics, and we can see 2 red columns here for this particular user contributing to these disk-related metrics that are quite high. So again, we can get the historical view, but again, I'm gonna drill in, but at this point, I could message the user, I can call them up, I can look them up in Active Directory and be like, hey man, I noticed you on this machine and it's going nuts. So what's going on? But if I wanted to, again, get more information before I contact him, I can continue drilling into it. And now we can see the processes view. And in this view, I can actually identify that individual process that was causing our problem. So we went from that 10,000 foot view all the way down to a very minute, very focused troubleshooting. And we can see that relationship all the way from this process and how it's impacting the host way at that 10,000 foot view. So now we want to take some kind of corrective action. In Solve is a read-only display at the moment. So this is perfect for your NOC or your help desk or for people who just want to, explore your Citrix environment without actually doing anything. This would be perfect for them. But if we want to take corrective action, we have to switch to ControlUp. So I'm going to, again, just drill through really quick as to the same troubleshooting flow and what that looks like in the console. So we can see all of our virtual machines here. Here's our guy in critical. Here's our red columns. Again, they stick out quite nicely. I personally think they stick out better in Solve. It looks much nicer, but we will continue going through. And so here we're drilling into the machine, and here's where the ControlUp Real-Time console can actually do its management portion of it. So this is the corrective action part. So if we right-click on a resource, we get a contextual menu that's sensitive to that object. So this being a machine object brings up machine-relevant actions. So if I wanted to solve this problem, I could reboot the machine. That would most certainly solve it. I can do some kind of message to all the users on the machine. I can force power it off via using the hypervisor, or I can extend ControlUp and actually write a script action or use one of our community ones to try to find more information here. Again, I'm just going to continue to drill through so we can just take a quick look at what it looks like in the ControlUp console. And so here's Steve. You can see in the ControlUp console, we're highlighting the individual columns that we think are of interest, not the group of columns that Solve does such a nice job doing. So here now I've got my user. If I right click on him, you can see I get a different contextual menu. So I can do different things for this particular user. So I could start a chat and say, hey man, what are you doing? I can actually send him even like send a super message where we can actually send him a poll, or we can actually send images and stuff like that. Just giant banner saying, stop whatever you're doing to solve this problem. But again, I'm going to just continue to drill in. And now we're in the processes view, which is what we saw again in Solve, but I'm going to take corrective action here. So in this particular case, I'm going to pretend that this is like a report generator. Maybe someone started like a giant report that they had at the end of the day and it's been running into the next day or something like that. So I don't want this impacting other users on this machine. So actually, I'm going to throttle this process. So I'm going to start it down to 4%. We can see it's currently consuming 18%. And again, due to the real-time nature of ControlUp, now that I've taken an action, boom, we can see the result. So now we understand cause and effect, right? We're not waiting 15 minutes to see that the IO went down, to 4,000. And then the question is, well, did something actually happen in that 15 minutes to actually generate that change? Maybe the report generator is done, maybe it's doing a lighter load. But here we can actually see that cause and effect. So now it's down to about 6%, a little bit higher than the 4 we specified, but I'm sure it'll get there. But I'm going to stop throttling here in case anyone else in the ControlUp environment is doing demos. And we'll see, again, that cause and effect, boom, CPU goes back, IO goes back up. Thanks to the real-time nature, we have the capability of actually seeing what's going on. So now let's get into some of the automation. So this is the exciting part for me, and I think Rory too. We both use this quite extensively, yeah. So I am going to just focus on my Citrix environment here, and I actually have a session open on one of my machines here. Let me see if I can find me. It's on my MCS machine. Where am I? There I am. So this is a session I have going on a MCS desktop. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a session screenshot so you guys can kind of see what I'm seeing. Okay, and I'm just going to enable refresh so that way it updates. And what I'm going to do is I have Adobe Reader here, and it's got a 3D model open. Well, my VM does not have any 3D capabilities in it. So as I manipulate this model, it's going to be quite slow. What we see here is we've got the column for user input delay. This actually detects how quickly the user interface updates. So this is using just normal Windows APIs. You can see as I move my mouse between these columns, how that highlight changes. So user input delay actually measures that, and it actually tells you how long my mouse moving from name to user and how long that column took to change took. So I'm going to go into my machine here, and I'm going to start manipulating this application. And what I want you to watch for is once the user input delay hits about 100 to 200 milliseconds or so, I'm going to adjust the process priority automatically. So I'm going to give it just a little bit of extra CPU when I see that this application is struggling. So here we go. And now I'm manipulating it. You can kind of see, well, through the shadow, it's quite choppy. It's slow. We can see I'm at about 188 milliseconds for user input delay. So I'm getting, 5 frames a second, high CPU, because again, it's not juiced up. And we should see the process priority eventually change, and boom, just like that. ControlUp picked up that the user input delay was high, and then it adjusted the process priority on our behalf to give that a little extra oomph. So if you can imagine doing this in like a healthcare organization, if you're running like Epic or Meditech or any of those applications, you can actually measure their user input delay. And once you see it start to go up a certain point, we can bump that process priority, so that way they get a little more extra CPU cycles to bring that down. So if you have support contracts like Honor Roll or something like that, this can help maintain that status for you.
Trentent, for those not using something like this today, what would the people who are calling the help desk be reporting? Would it be stuff like, oh, my mouse in my virtual desktop seems to like stutter, and my keyboard, I'm typing, but it takes like a few seconds, and my applications are slow? Or what would be the most, I guess, common complaint related to this?
Yeah, so the best is if you're using like a user interface and you click and there's a delay, that drives you nuts, right? Especially if that delay is like 400 milliseconds or higher, because I think that's the Doherty UX principle. But once you hit above some threshold, and about 400 milliseconds tends to be it, that delay impacts your actual productivity. So being able to try typing with 400 milliseconds is impossible. So roughly around there, what you see is like as you click on things, there's just a delay, right? And it's very easy within ControlUp to tell if that's the network, because we can look at the network latency. Is the network latency good? But it's usually quite hard to see if an application is delaying. And an application could be delaying for numerous reasons. Could be, CPU contention, disk contention. Maybe it's trying to reach out to a database and it's waiting for data to come back, and it's poorly coded, so it's not asynchronous. It's just frozen the UI while it's waiting for that to happen. So it'll be things like that would be the symptoms of this. But really, I think targeting specific applications, like key applications this way, would be very powerful, just to make sure that if you have contention, like multi-session servers where you've got lots of users on them and everyone's running under normal processes, everyone's sharing that CPU cycle time, right? But not every process actually deserves or needs that. So that's where I think it is most suited. So let's look at how to implement this. So I've got my triggers here, and I've got one trigger, this guy. So increased priority when high input delay is detected. So this is how we configure the automation. So as opposed to going add, I'm just going to edit it because it already exists. And first thing we're looking at is the record type. So where is this trigger monitoring? What resources is it monitoring? So this is monitoring processes. And we're looking for this particular process. And we're looking for, is the process priority normal to begin with? Because if it's above normal, there's no point trying to make it above normal again. And is the user input delay greater than or equal to 100 milliseconds? Once it's in that state for 3 seconds, once it's reported 100 milliseconds over 3 consecutive seconds, we're focused on our Citrix environment here, and this trigger operates all the time. Then we execute this action, set process priority to below normal. So let's take a quick look at that script action. All right, set process priority to above normal. And so this is what the script action looks like, just the title, the settings. So I'm assigned it to a process record, which matches our trigger, and our execution context is the target machine, which means it's running under the system account, which is the highest level account. And so this is the script. Like, look at this, 2 lines. It could actually be summed up in 1 line, but I added the priority hash to be there. But essentially, we just get the process ID and then we change its process priority. So now you can start seeing that there's actually like very little scripting that's used a lot of times, because a lot of the logic is in the trigger for when it should execute. And so mostly your script action is just based around the result you want to see. And then you let all the filtering and the complexity happen on the trigger level. So this way we can have this really complex behavior with a very simple script. So very, very cool. So that's how that operates. And now if I go back to the slides, so that's performance monitoring, and that's monitoring and optimizing as an example for one particular example using the ControlUp automation engine and showing how triggers connect together. Let's flip over to the demos that we want to show today. So these are demos that are based around essentially what you guys or you people have kind of mentioned to us, that there's a lot of people still working remotely. So what are you guys offering in that capacity? And then in addition to that, what can you do in our Citrix environment to help make it better? So I'm going to start with the remote DX and the session optimization and session recording demos, and then I will hand it off to Rory for the final four. So let's start with remote DX. So remote DX is a new feature that we're offering. That is a new virtual channel driver that you install, or you ask your users to install, especially home users who are using their own machines, to install on their machine, because it's just like the Citrix receiver or Citrix workspace app, sorry, and it installs a virtual channel driver in there. So it's only ever active when the session's active, and it's not a management, it's more of a read-only type view. So let's just take a quick look at what this looks like. So if I focus on this, and I'll focus on my sessions, and I'm going to change my column preset to remote DX. So this is what remote DX looks like within the ControlUp Real-Time console. So I can sort by client device score. So the client device score is an aggregate of all of these columns that you're seeing to the right, and it's kind of telling us how or what it thinks that that performance is. So we can see we got lots of Wi-Fi at over 80–90%, so we're looking pretty good there. We've got some latency, 100 milliseconds for total session latency. LAN latency looks pretty good. Internet latency not too bad either. So my connection here looks pretty good. You can see all the metadata associated with that. I'm just going to switch back over to Solve and just show you what Solve shows. Because Solve being a SaaS-based application, we can do some pretty cool stuff with it. So let's escape out of here and head back to our user sessions. All right, so now I'm looking at our client device score. And I've got this user here, T-Ty, so he's got a good score, and I got T-Tough here, he's got another good score, but let's take a look at what this looks like. We have this beautiful little icon here that actually gives us information in that environment. Actually, let me just see if I can't flip to, that's good enough. All right, so I'm gonna click, and okay, so this is what we see there. So we see the LAN latency, so I'm wired in, so you're not, that's actually not very interesting because wired connections are always pretty solid. Here's a wireless connection. So here we see the LAN latencies, it's 1 millisecond. Why this is important information, this is probably one of the most important information you can get for these home users, is their local LAN latency, because this is the floor that everything operates off of, right? If it's 100 milliseconds, everything beyond here is going to be 100 milliseconds higher. It's the first hop. So this is the floor of the environment. So anything that's like 7 milliseconds, 8 milliseconds or higher is usually a sign that the router might be overloaded. It might be, stressed out. Lots of these home routers, they've got multifunction. They can work as a mediaplex. They can work as a backup server. They can do BitTorrent. They've got all these things on there, and those CPUs are pretty weak CPUs. And when you're trying to funnel packets through to users, you could have a really bad experience. And by actually looking at the LAN latency, we might be able to identify that. So you want this as low as possible. So obviously Wi-Fi signal strength, obviously critically important. And again, ControlUp, we're updating these metrics live. I think for remote DX, it's every 5 seconds. That's about as fast as is possible over the virtual channel. So as users actually move around in hospitals or at home, you can actually watch their Wi-Fi signal strength go up and down and up and down. So if users were complaining and you got them on the phone, you could actually be like, okay, so like, where are you now? Because your Wi-Fi signal strength is 30%, and then they go to the kitchen and it's 80%. And you're like, okay, well, I can tell you work from the kitchen because your living room it's a dead zone, something like that. So this is information that will be able to help you actually identify real causes as opposed to just guess and test as to what's happening at the user's home. You don't need to throw at another laptop now. You don't need to throw them, ask them to upgrade their internet or anything like that. Very, very cool. So let's get into some automation, what we can do with this. So now that we have this really cool information with Remote DX, what can we do with it? So I'm looking at, again, this particular user, I'm going to just screen share them so you guys can all see what I'm seeing too. And in this particular case, because the automations that we have for Remote DX actually activate when the session connects, you could change that, but we generally have it when the session connects. I'm just going to activate them so you can just kind of see what it looks like in this little window. So first one is we will actually notify you when your operating system is out of date. So notify when there's insecure operating system. So it's going to execute this action, and we'll see what this looks like. Boom, that's what it looks like. So we've got a couple different notification styles. We've got one like this where we can do a window that's always on top and it's got your message in it, and you can actually customize this message and even pass metrics into it if you wanted to. So this way the user has to click to accept it, or you can even just have it where it won't go away and the user just has to wait for a timeout or something like that. And in this particular case, since this is an insecure operating system, we could actually even create an automated action to log them off after they get this notification. So that's insecure operating system. So let's try the next one so you can see what it looks like. Let's go when the poor Wi-Fi is detected. So you can see you can adjust the message within the script action here. If you want something different, you can add additional metrics as well implied by the client metric 1. You could add client metric 2 and 3 and so on and so forth. And so what does this look like? Boom. So you can kind of see it here. It's kind of obstructed a little bit, but now this is a toast notification, weak Wi-Fi signal detected. So as your users are roaming around their home or whatever, they'll get these pop-ups saying, hey, your Wi-Fi got degraded. So hopefully they'll know enough to move back or move out of that area into somewhere else.
Right, and that's one of the #1 complaints of people roaming around a hospital. Like, oh, my connection's terrible, my thing is slow. And then you find out they say they're roaming around the hospital, but really they're trying to work out of the reinforced stairwell so people don't bug them. And the Wi-Fi is just terrible there.
Yeah, or hidden in bathrooms or something. People work in weird places. So again, this one, insecure Wi-Fi access point. So this is important because obviously if you're at a coffee shop or something like that and your Wi-Fi access point is open, I mean, anyone could snoop on your traffic or even set up a man in the middle. You don't want users connecting into your environment when they're on an open access point. So you're able to actually message that and then, again, forcibly log them off. So let's just take a quick look at what those automations look like. So I'll just look at one because they're all pretty much the same minus the different metrics that they're keying in here. So I will go for this one because this is the most complex ones, but here's our 3, and these will become community triggers shortly. Notify user when insecure older OS is detected. So we're targeting a session and we're looking for all of these different properties. So in this particular case, we went through and we found the list of operating systems that are no longer supported, and we've added them in here. So is the operating system XP? I hope not at this point. I'd be shocked you could even get XP on the internet, but in case you can. XP, Vista, Windows 7, Windows 8, all of these are now into like extended support, or I think Windows 7 is out of support entirely. Windows 8 might be in extended support. I doubt many people are paying for Windows 8 extended support though. So we're checking if it's Windows 8. For Mac OS, we're checking all the different Mac OS versions to see if they are supported by Apple or not. And then lastly, we're looking for Windows 10, and we're looking for not long-term service branch or long-term service channel, because those releases are 5 + 5 years. If you're running those, odds are you still have another like 5 years to go on your 1507 or whatever the first LTSB release was. And then for the semi-annual channels, we're looking for the client OS build. So is it any one of these semi-annual channel builds that are no longer supported? And then we'll just be adding these as operating systems roll out of support. So once this evaluates to true, and we're looking at across our entire organization, we run that one script, notify user when insecure or older operating systems detected. And if we wanted to get rid of the users, if we don't want them logging in with these insecure products, we can add an additional action. So we can actually stack actions. We can just add log off. So next time someone logs in with an insecure operating system, they get the note, they get the message. In this particular script, we can have like a 30-second delay after, and then session logs off. And we can do the same with any one of these. Maybe not poor Wi-Fi, probably don't want to log them off with poor Wi-Fi, but insecure access point and older operating system for sure. Okay, so I'm being a bit slow. I will try to pick this up a little bit. So the last one, session recording. So for session recording, I actually wrote an article. It's on the Citrix site as well, that talks about how you can add ControlUp power to the Citrix session recording. So essentially, any of the metrics you saw at the top, we can start to record, or we can start to annotate within session recording what that value was or what the status was when that user was doing that. There's a delay of about 3 to 5 seconds from when ControlUp picks it up to when it does the annotation. So there's a bit of a delay within the stream, and I'll go over some of the screenshots really quickly here. But it's very, very good because it gives you a really good idea, and then you can just rewind a few seconds to get the context as to what was happening. So this is Citrix session recording as it looks today. You'll have to pardon the size of the screenshot, but it's not really new anymore, but what they added was the ability to annotate the recording. So you get these little dots, and you can click on the dots and it jumps to that part in the recording. It's beautiful. Citrix session recording is it's a really good product. If you haven't tried it, I strongly recommend it. So how to do this? So we configure the trigger, and I walk you through that in this article. So for these metrics that I'm recording them on the session level. So I set something like this, where the user input delay is greater than 300 milliseconds. So not only could you increase the process priority, but we could also do a little annotation saying, hey, when a user was doing some action, their user input delay got high. And then you can go back to the video and review, what were they doing? You know, if they hit that report button and then the UI froze because it was doing some activity, you'll be able to annotate that within your recording. So that's very cool. So here you can see the scope. We're looking at the scope for everything. We run the actions. So these actions are all attached to this article. They're down at the bottom. We'll make them community actions shortly. So you can see I've got network latency, user input delay, CPU. I think those are the 3 out of the box that I created, but they're super easy to change. If you just play with them, it's not too difficult. And then here's where you can actually attach these additional ones to other community triggers we have. So for instance, if you wanted to find out when users went idle, you could actually attach the script there, and it'll actually tell you when the session goes idle. So when a user walks away from the keyboard, there's no keyboard or mouse activity. So there you go. And here's what it looks like. So I've got some pictures there for what that looks like. So this is what we are adding in these events and bookmarks here. You can see the session state was changed to idle 5 minutes, 2 minutes, then it was changed to active. And then when the user was manipulating the model, the user input delay reported 250 milliseconds, and so it got annotated in the recording. And so when you click on the recording, it takes you right to that little event, that little timestamp. Very cool. Here's another screenshot where I was playing with some really poor network activity. And of course, as soon as I started a file copy across the client drive map, my network latency went up because there's more contention for that network traffic. And so with those ping times started to increase because they got queued a little lower. And we could actually see once I started the copy, my network latency went up to 280 milliseconds. So now if I went back to the video and I clicked on that and the user was complaining about poor performance while they were doing stuff, I can visually see why. I can see that they're doing a file copy and their network stats were pretty poor. So I can correlate that with insights. So very, very cool. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Rory to hit up some of our other automations.
Cool. Perfect. Yep. Excellent. Should be seeing my screen now.
Yep.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, Trentent actually kind of just showed some of the community triggers. And if you're not familiar with the community triggers, if you look in triggers, if you're already a ControlUp customer, you'll see some of these triggers in there that you did not create that are grayed out. And some of these are really, really useful. And one particular community trigger, around the start of the pandemic, when I was working in a hospital, a subset of our users were migrated onto one-to-one persistent virtual desktops. It was just like a stopgap solution that fit for their use case at the time. But one of the struggles with that was because it was a one-to-one persistent desktop, if it power cycled and the machine booted up at maybe 3, 4 in the morning, and they're working till like 4:35, but the VDA is unregistered, they're not going to be able to work. They're going to try and launch their virtual desktop, and it's going to fail. So either they're going to be very patient and wait for you to get in the office, which is not likely, or they're going to call the help desk, and the help desk is going to page the on-call, and it's not going to be any fun for anyone. So in that scenario, there just happened, as I was a ControlUp customer at the time, to be a perfect community trigger. And it was this one here, which you might not be able to read it, but it's AAC_reboot unregistered VDA. And if I open it up, you could see it's based off the machine, and the metrics it's keying off of include the CVAD registration is unregistered, the CVAD maintenance mode is off, so theoretically it should be able to take a user session. The CVAD user sessions is 0, and the VM power state is on. So for all intents and purposes, this machine is in a state that it should be working. However, the VDA has been detected as unregistered, which means the user cannot log in. So that's why they're not going to be too happy, and they're probably going to call you. So then, kind of as Trentent showed in some of his demos there, you could set the scope maybe to your virtual desktops. And because this is a community trigger, it actually already had this script ready to go. All I had to do was change the scope, and boom, it was ready and working within my environment. And I did one thing, I did add an email alert because I wanted to know when this thing was actually doing its job and it was working. So I no longer got the calls at 3 in the morning because a coder can get on to work, but I did wake up and I could see an email when I started my day that this did indeed run, and it avoided a call, which is awesome, exactly what you want. For my next demos, I recorded them because I wanted to be able to show the actual automation in action. So for this first one, rather than looking at just the VDAs and the actual user load, which is obviously very important, I wanted to focus a little bit of time on the management server layers too. So you probably try to size your management servers as best you can to use as little resources as possible while still getting the best possible output and performance. And like, for example, maybe something like your Citrix license server, maybe you have some DHCP servers. If you're using PVS, you might keep the disks down to maybe 50, 60 gigs, and then obviously the OS is going to consume a lot of that. It doesn't leave a whole lot left over. And Microsoft changed a few years ago now to a roll-up approach for the Windows updates, which is very convenient because if you haven't patched a machine like 3 months, you need to patch. It's kind of one and done. But what you're sacrificing is those updates are quite large now, and they chew up a lot of disk space. So I think most enterprise organizations use MECM, Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager, previously SCCM. And what I did in my organization, or my previous organization, I created the script which clears old SCCM cache. So I'm not showing the actual script and what it's doing, but essentially it's clearing all update cache from SCCM on a device that's older than 7 days. And then to get it to work automatically for me, I went in, I created an advanced trigger based off machine, and very simple for this one, I just put in the filter based off of free space on system drive. Select that. Now, you can pick what suits your environment or even suits the scope of machines that you're setting this for. I set this for 10 gigs, and I was telling Trentent, part of the reason I picked 10 gigs was because other teams in the organization were using SolarWinds to alert the service desk, the help desk, and we were forced to also use that for doing some of the alerting to the help desk. But the thing about SolarWinds was it would take 5+ minutes before it would detect an issue like, the threshold of a disk being hit, whereas ControlUp is real time, as we've said multiple times, which means that this automated action is going to run before that alerting has a chance to detect that it hit that 10 gig threshold. So I just set my scope to my Citrix delivery controllers there. And I'm going to allow it to run this clear old SCCM cache. I could have ControlUp send an email for the execution of the script if I wanted to. What I ended up doing for this one in particular, because this is another one, now it might be useful to know when this one runs, because if you notice it running maybe within 2 days of it running previously, maybe there's something chewing up that disk at an abnormal rate that you want to know about. So I did set up an email alert just to myself, not to my entire team, because this was my baby. I created this. I wanted to know just in case I needed to address something. And then I just gave it a descriptive name, which I suggest you all do, because if you're like me and you're an automation nut, then you're going to possibly have a lot of different triggers and a lot of actions that you're running in your environment. Okay, and with that said, this is where the video recording and the editing came in handy. So if you can remember, I set the scope to my Citrix delivery controllers here. So this is this level in my organization. I will focus on that and I will go to my machines. And if I scroll over a little bit, we can see that metric that I was keying off of, which is the free space on system drive. Now here it was at 27.9 gigs. I only had the MECM agent on one machine, so I only got one attempt or pop at doing this for the demo as well. Another reason I recorded. So what I did in the background that you can't see is I started dumping a bunch of ISO files, large ISO files onto the machine. It's kind of an old NUC, so you can see it's lighting up like a Christmas tree because it's quite slow. But you can see within seconds, it's clearing out that space because it's going to run this script. So we should see, boom, there you go. And how much it clears probably depends on your organization. And here we could see the email alert to tell me that that did indeed run. But as I was saying, how much it clears is probably going to depend on your organization and what you've got the cache settings, the client settings set for within MECM. But I was seeing an average of about 6.8 or 7 gigs of free disk space being cleared. So a pretty sizable chunk just on clearing Windows updates. The last demo I want to show, and I'll try to do it pretty quickly so we could show some more really great stuff from Trentent. But this one was really interesting. So my last organization bought a product called Cyberark for rotating our domain admin passwords and also just our elevated account admins. And obviously, if you're a Citrix admin, you might have an elevated account that maybe you log into your servers, you know, your storefront servers, license servers, delivery controllers, or whatever. You might even be in the habit of logging on to all your servers at the beginning of the day, just thinking in case you need to get on there and there's a problem and you want to be able to see everything or whatever. You don't have to do that. You should use ControlUp, but if old habits die hard. But one of the problems with doing that is if you're not doing anything on those machines and you're just leaving your session idle, a hacker could come in and take the elevated rights that your account has and just have their merry way with it. But then also when CyberArk is rotating passwords, when something happens, like maybe you hit X in your RDP session and that left your account in a disconnected state, or maybe even there was a network blip and you had a bunch of RDP sessions open and they all dropped where you couldn't remember everything you were RDP'd into, all of a sudden you've got a bunch of disconnected sessions. And what you might not be aware of is when they're in a disconnected state, they're still trying to authenticate about every 15 minutes. So after maybe 3 or 4 attempts, it's going to lock your account out. You're going to have to call the help desk, and it's just one of the joys of having rotating passwords. It's very difficult to get used to. So from a security standpoint, and also for helping admins avoid these lockouts, here's something that I did with ControlUp to help with that. So this one was not a script that I created myself. It was just a log off session that Trentent actually used in a few of his examples. And it's probably the most used one you're going to use as a Citrix admin or engineer. But here I'm going to create a trigger. This time it's going to be based off of session. And again, this is a very simple filter. It's going to be based off of one metric, and that metric is idle time. And again, you could set this to whatever suits your environment. Like if you have something rotating the passwords, you'll know how often the passwords rotate. So maybe that could dictate you know, how much idle time you should allow for these sessions before logging them off. Or the sweet spot that I found was about every 1.5 to 2 hours. For this demo, I'm just going to do 30 minutes because I want to make it as quick as possible. What I didn't do in the last demo is change this value. Really, there's no purpose to change it here either, but I just want to show you it working. So I could set that, it triggers when it's been 30 minutes, but it doesn't run the action until it's been in that state for 2 minutes. And here I'm going to set my scope again to my delivery controller, and this time instead of the SCCM script, I am going to run that log off session script. Okay, perfect. And I'll just hit OK. And again, just give it a descriptive name. And for the sake of time, let me fast forward a bit. Another benefit of recording when you're tight on time. And then just hit apply and OK. Really only have to hit one, but I'm a little OCD. So whenever there is an apply and OK button, I do both. But if I go back again, we set that scope to the Citrix delivery controller. So if I connect to it, and this time instead of going to the machine view, I go to sessions, we can see right there's the idle time. It's at 14 minutes, and if you can remember, I set it to 30 minutes for this, and also to be in the state for 2 minutes before running that forced log off. So I did use the magic of video editing, and I've sped this up as well. We'll see a nice little clock icon. But while that's doing its thing, I'll say that the reason why I liked to do this and force a log off is because if you do it by policy, the user can get a prompt saying, hey, you've been idle, blah, 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 we're going to log your session off. But that gives them a chance to just go to their RDP session and just wiggle the mouse and keep their session live, when they probably don't really need to be doing anything if they've been idle that long. So forcing the log off helps avoid lockouts and also keep it secure. And we can see it's been in that state now for 2 minutes. So within a few seconds, depending on how fast your log offs are on your machine, this one's an old one, so it might take a little longer, but we can see it's clearing out and it's logged off. And this is exactly what I see as an end user. My RDP session was forced to log out. It didn't warn me, it just did it, keeping things nice and tight and secure in our environment. And that's it for my demos. Trentent, I will throw it back to you for the next part.
Sounds good. So actually, we had one more poll. Jake, do you mind tossing up the last poll here? And so this is just around, device shortages. Have a lot of you managed to get devices in your environment, or are they all corporate provided? So I'm just curious what you guys are seeing out there. Okay, and then when that's done, you can throw it back to me for sharing. Awesome, thank you. Okay, so we only have a couple minutes left, and weird little message there. Okay, so we only have a couple minutes left, so I'm just gonna really highlight a couple other features, a couple of the products that we've introduced this year that are really valuable and we think would provide a lot of value in your environment as well. The first one is Scallies, and so this product is the best-in-class product for monitoring your resource availability, whether they be individual servers, websites, or Citrix applications. We can monitor on premises, we can monitor from externally using cloud hives that we have geolocationally placed all over the world. So if you want to know how your resource is performing from Asia, you can spin up our Asia hive and have a test be firing against your environment from there. Or just have it all on premises if you just want to test your internal resources to make sure that they're available. So we can do both of that. And then we also have network tests that Scallies can do, and you can kind of see it there. Highly recommend you try it out. It's free for 21 days to stand up a trial. Super easy to do. You don't need to set up a sales call, as is usual with us. Everything is pretty much self-service. And then if you need help, or if you like what you see and you want to learn more about it, then you can reach out to us and we can certainly help there. Last one is ControlUp HDX. So this is the new offering that we introduced this year, where you've got your just looking at the results of the poll, fascinating. So 11% of you out there are having your people use their personal machines. So Remote DX solves that problem beautifully because it's not intrusive. It doesn't monitor their browsing habits or anything else that you see on their device. So for personal machines, Remote DX is a wonderful solution for those types of users. They don't have to worry about privacy and so on and so forth. Once the session's closed, there's no communication. It's all good. Corporate machines, 26% of you said you have corporate machines. So this is where EdgeDX comes in. EdgeDX is an agent that gives you full control of the device, whether it's on your network or whether it's not. So as long as it has connectivity to the internet, you can see stats and you can run scripts against it. And what's really powerful with EdgeDX is we have some crazy reporting capabilities. So you can run a script, get a value back, and then actually throw that into a report in EdgeDX, and EdgeDX can build these beautiful reports. So an example of that is we can actually track like CPU temperature across your remote devices. And CPU temperature, you say, why would that matter? Well, it turns out if you're using your laptop in Mexico in the sun, that sun, when it's beating down on it, can actually cause your CPU to thermal throttle, which can cause everything on it to be slow, whether that's your Citrix sessions or anything else that you might be running on it. So it's maybe a little bit bizarre to think that way, but it's a real use case. People go on vacations, people live in hot climates, and people use these portable devices everywhere. So with this, you'd be actually able to track that, or even the megahertz or whatever value that the CPU is reporting when you run that report. So we can track all of that with EdgeDX using custom reports. It's very, very cool. So last thing I want to get to before we try to get to questions here at the end is again, ControlUp. We are one of the few organizations that you can just go to our website, hit the download icon, you put in your email, and boom, you've got the software. You don't need to set up a sales call. You don't need to set up a POC call. Of course, we encourage that because we want you to have the best experience possible. But if you think if you're techie and you really want to play with software and you want to understand it before you jump into big POC type call, you can just download it, run it, no problem, easy peasy. You won't find that with many other vendors or really probably any of our competitors. So highly recommend you give our software a try that way. All available from controlup.com. So with that, I want to say thank you. And Jake, if you don't mind, we'll just hammer through some of those questions that we got at the end here.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you. One of the questions we had was the custom dashboards that you showed. Are they made visible to everyone with access to that dashboard?
So you can share that dashboard amongst your user community. So if you have a help desk dashboard, you could just share it with the help desk. You don't need to share it with everybody. So you can pick and choose.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you. There's another question here about the sort of granularity of permissions with Solve as well. I think you've probably answered that, but for example, if you want somebody in the help desk to log off a session or terminate a process, but you don't want them to go any further than that, is that something else you can do?
So Solve inherits the permissions from the ControlUp console. So you absolutely can set those permissions. Solve doesn't have actions today. We are working on adding that in. But if you want to be prepared for it, yeah, you go through our security policy here, and it's exceptionally granular. Every single option within ControlUp can be enabled or disabled based on user or user group. So each one of these options we can completely disable. So if you only wanted to give your help desk the ability to log off the session without the ability to shadow or send a message, you just hop into security policy here. Since that's a session action, we go into the session actions. And here we go to the remote desktop services. So here we can actually say, we don't want them to disconnect. We don't want them to send a message. We don't want them to do a send super message. And boom. Now, well, this is for local admins, but we do that for the help desk role. Yeah.
So basically any action, you've got complete granularity over it from a sort of permissions perspective, which it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, each one of these folders here, if you structure them out, so I worked at a very large organization where we had individual applications siloed on different servers. So we had different folder silos, and those app teams wanted access to see the users. So we could hide all the other folders from all the other app teams, but give them access. So each one of our app teams could see their little silo. Is beautiful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Got another question here just around the features. So for example, if you're running an on-premises environment, does anything vary in terms of what you can do if that was, say, in your own data center, or it was running in a cloud, or are there any sort of differences to be aware of?
So ControlUp our backplane, we strongly recommend you choose the ControlUp Cloud product where the backplane is hosted in the cloud. I think ControlUp is one of the few products that's actually done cloud correctly. So we maintain all the configuration stuff in there. That's how we have it as a portable application. If you require, like if you're DoD or something like that, where you have to have an air gap system with no internet connectivity as well, we do offer on-premises choices. And with regards to the ControlUp Real-Time console or Real-Time DX, the experience is identical. When we're talking insights or solve and all of those, there are going to be differences because obviously those are SaaS-based applications hosted off of the internet. But you can definitely reach out to us and tell us what you're trying to accomplish, and we can see what we could do to accommodate that.
Brilliant, thank you. Just having a quick look through the list. Just a quick question: which version of ControlUp comes with Solve, or is that something you just bolt on to any version?
So yes. So I believe you need 8.2. So 8.2 is one we released, I think, in November of last year. And so it's been out for a while. The majority of our customers are very good at keeping up to date with our software because, again, the control plane's on the cloud, it's portable EXE. You just download a new one, you double click it, and there you go, you're updated. A little bit more complex with the agent, but it's pretty simple overall. So yeah, Solve starts with 8.2. So anyone who's downloading it today, Solve is there.
Fantastic. Just one last one as well. Is it possible to schedule any of those remote actions?
It absolutely is. So we also include a new trigger type called the scheduled trigger. And this trigger I have huge potential for, and I'm really excited to try to work with Rory and write some crazy articles about what you can do with this. The big one is mostly around cloud environments, right? So there's a slippery slope where you want to have your users be productive, so you give them long idle and disconnect timeouts, but at the same time, if they're idle or disconnected sessions at the end of the day on your servers, on your cloud servers, that's costing you money. So what we could do with scheduled triggers is we can actually look at different points in time, so say after hours, like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and we can say anyone over 1 hour idle or disconnect time, we're going to move them to the next stage of that. So if they're idle, they get into a disconnected state. If they're disconnected, they get logged off. And then at 6 o'clock, you can say, okay, anyone over 30 minutes. And then at 7 o'clock, you can say anyone over 15 minutes. So now at your end of business day, you have the users logging off really quickly in order to get those machines shut down. And then we could also use scheduled triggers there to evaluate, is there 0 sessions on? Or we could even just use a regular trigger and say, if there's 0 sessions, we're going to stop and deallocate that virtual machine. So all of that is capable today. We're in the process of like writing some articles about how to set that up in your environment. It's pretty trivial in ControlUp to do so, but we think this is like tremendously powerful tool, and you can use those scheduled triggers with any of those actions that you have. Unlike regular triggers, scheduled triggers don't require the state to move into your filter. So like Rory was showing, the idle time being 30 minutes, which means that the idle time needs to move to be in 30 minutes or greater than 30 minutes. With scheduled triggers, it just does a point in time calculation. So if that session was at 29 minutes, it's not going to execute when the scheduled trigger fires. But if it was at 31 minutes when the trigger fires, it'll actually do an action there. It doesn't have to wait for it to roll over, which is what our regular triggers do.
Fantastic, thank you.
Little long-winded explanation, but I'm excited about this feature. Very cool.
Yeah, we can tell.
I get a little too jazzed up. Okay, I think, yeah, we're 5 minutes over, so just want to say thank you to everyone who joined our session, and feel free to reach out to myself or Rory either on Twitter or via email or through the CUGC platform, and we'll get any additional questions you guys have. I'll pass it back to Stephanie.
Hi, I'm back. I didn't think my camera was going to work for a second. I thought maybe Rory's camera was talking to my camera, but it popped back up. Thank you, guys. I think maybe we should schedule ControlUp webinars to be like an hour and a half because you guys always have a lot of good Q&A. I think we just need like the extra time because there's a lot of questions in there. So I'm going to send, I'm definitely going to send you guys a report with all the questions. If you guys asked a question and it didn't get answered and you did not opt in to share your email address, just put something in the Q&A right now, and I'll know that I can send your question on. Otherwise, I'll still send the questions anonymously unless you opted to share. And with that, those of you who did opt in, I know you're looking for your chance to win a $200 Amazon gift card. I'm going to pull the registration report as soon as we wrap up. And actually, I'll pull the attendee report, and I'm going to have Google randomizer pick a number, and that will be my winner. So I will send an email to the winner, and I'll also post it on Twitter. So be on the lookout for those. And with that, I just want to thank you guys for being with us today. Thanks, Trenton. Thanks, Rory. I know, Rory, you stayed up or past you're not staying up late. I guess you're staying past your normal work day.
I thought you were going to say bedtime. It's only 7. I'm not that old.
I mean, I could go to bed at like 8 probably most nights. Thanks to all of you. Thank you, Jake. I appreciate you watching all those questions and running the polls for us today. And I think with that, I can let you all get back to your day. I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you hopefully at the next CUGC event, the EMEA XL, maybe.
Yeah.
All right. Bye,
Hopefully.
everyone.
Everyone.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.